Kids serving life in prison. Children are known to be the angels sent on earth by God as a reward. They are a symbol of compassion, generosity, loyalty, and peace. However, there were some kids who completely invalidated these attributes by committing serious crimes and being sent to prison. In today's episode of Crime 101, we'll be looking at the stories of kids who have served their life in prison. Number 7. Alex King. Looks can be deceiving, as if you saw Alex King in person, you couldn't tell that this well-dressed and well-behaved kid had brutally murdered his father, Terry King, with the help of his brother, Derek, and neighbor Ricky. According to certain reports and statements by Alex and Derek, Terry was an abusive father who would often punish his children over insignificant things. Because of his father's abuse, Alex started spending time with his neighbor, Ricky Chavez. Chavez, being a child molester, took advantage of the situation formed a sexual relationship with Alex. When Terry's abusive behavior started to increase significantly, the trio hatched a plan together to kill him. On November 26, 2001, Alex, accompanied by his brother Derek, went to their father's room with an aluminum bat and started hitting their father while he was asleep. The two gruesomely killed their father by beating him to death. The duo then set their house on fire in hopes of concealing their crime. However, they were eventually caught and sent to trial. Upon further investigation, the cops confirmed that it was Ricky who influenced the boys into killing their father and that he was molesting Alex. Throughout the trial, the King boys changed their statements several times, but upon investigation, it was confirmed that Ricky played a key role in the murder of Terry King. Derek King was sentenced to 7 years in prison, and Alex was sentenced to 8 years in prison. They are now released from prison and are living an anonymous life in the country. Number 6. Heather Opel. The second kid on our list is Heather Opel. Born in 1988, Heather Opel was the oldest daughter of Barbara Opel, who was working as a caretaker of Jerry Dwayne Hyman's mom. Hyman had hired Barbara full-time to take care of his 89-year-old mother, and she, along with her children, used to live in the basement of their home in the 3700 block of 22nd Street in Everett. Everything was going well for them, till one day, Barbara got into an argument with Hyman. The two had an intense argument, due to which Barbara came up with a plan to kill Hyman. Hyman was a 64-year-old retired man who was suffering from terminal cancer at the time. Throughout his life, Hyman was a successful man and had managed to save tens of thousands of dollars till his retirement. Barbara wanted to end his life and steal all his money to spend the life of her dreams. To execute this gruesome plan of hers, she hired 5 children, one of which was her own daughter, Heather Opel, who was 13 years old at the time. Along with these children, she planned Hyman's murder and offered them cash in return for their participation. The children quickly agreed, and they began their planning. On the night of April 13, 2001, the 5 teenagers ambushed Hyman and attacked him with knives and baseball bats. Hyman tried to fight back, but due to his illness and old age, he couldn't defend himself and died. After Hyman was killed, Barbara came to his room and completely emptied his safe. They wrapped the body and dumped it in a shallow grave 10 miles away from his house. 8 days later, Hyman's body was found by the police and a formal investigation began. A few days after Hyman's murder, Heather Opel and her acquaintances were arrested by the police and were put on trial. They initially denied all the claims, but after concrete evidence of their crime was placed before them, they pleaded guilty and were sentenced to jail. Heather Opel was sentenced to 22 years in prison and will be released next year in 2023. Her mother, who was the mastermind behind the plan, was also caught, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Number 5. Stuart Harling, also known as the most dangerous teen in Britain, was arrested in April 2006 for brutally murdering a hospital nurse named Cheryl Moss. The victim was 33 years old when she was mercilessly stabbed 72 times by Stuart Harling. Moss was on her cigarette break outside St. George's Hospital in Hornchurch, Essex, when she was killed by Harling out of boredom. Harling was immediately arrested and sent to trial. The trial was not to decide whether he killed Moss or not. Instead, it was held to decide if he murdered her in cold blood or while suffering from a mental disorder. To understand this, let's discuss Stuart Harling's personality and what kind of life he lived before killing Moss. Stuart Harling was a loner who spent most of his time living in a virtual world of ultra-violent computer games and sick websites, often used by serial killers. The 19-year-old turned his back on his family and abandoned a career in accountancy as he immersed himself in a fantasy world of becoming a serial killer. He was so obsessed with serial killers that he told his psychiatrist that he dreams of becoming one someday. After he was put on trial, an investigation was opened to determine whether Harling murdered Moss in his senses or if he was suffering from a mental disorder. Many experts joined the case, and after several months of investigation, it was confirmed that Harling murdered Moss under the influence of violent video games, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment of at least 20 years in 2007. Number 4. Nate Anderson. This innocent-looking kid who's looking all scared and terrified in the courtroom has committed the most gruesome crime a kid of his age could do. In September of 2010, Nate Anderson, who was 15 years old at the time, mercilessly shot his 19-year-old sister, Amanda Anderson, in the head. Amanda was found dead in her family's New Chapel Hill home, about 100 miles from Dallas. When the police reached the location, only Nate Anderson was present there. He was the only person in the home when investigators arrived. He told the cops that he saw his sister's body in her bedroom when he returned home from his evening run. He also told them that he had not gone into the room after seeing her body from the doorway and called the cops immediately. His mysterious behaviors made the investigators suspect him, as he was highlighted as a suspect. This was later on confirmed in the arrest affidavit, as the investigators found Amanda Anderson's blood on Nate's clothing the night of the murder. The experts claimed that the blood spatter could only come from being in the room when his sister was shot. When Nate's family got to know about this, they couldn't believe it, as their son couldn't kill his own sister. After he was arrested, Nate Anderson pleaded guilty and confessed that he killed his sister, asking for forgiveness from his parents. At the age of 16, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with him being eligible for parole after 10 years. Number 3. Zachary Niegel. Another babyface criminal on the list is Zachary Niegel. Zachary was convicted in 2009 when he was found guilty of murdering his father with a hunting rifle. In May 2009, Niegel killed his 32-year-old father, Jason Niegel, in their Caldwell home. Zachary claimed that he murdered his father out of self-defense, as he was an abuser who physically and verbally abused him and his siblings. In the court hearing, Zachary said that the physical abuse happened for as long as he could remember. But things got serious when his parents got divorced and Jason was given custody of his children. Zachary claimed that after his parents' divorce, his father sexually abused him since he was 8 years old. As time went on, the sexual abuse became more frequent. This carried on for years, and when Zachary finally turned 14, he snapped and shot his father with his hunting rifle while he was asleep, putting an end to his and his siblings' miserable life. Even though Zachary killed his father to protect his siblings, he's still a criminal in the eyes of the judiciary, and he was sentenced to 7 years in jail. However, 5 years into the sentence, a judge determined him fit to be released to probation, allowing him back into society in August 2014. Number 2. Jessica Carline. From her scared looks in the courtroom, no one could tell that this 17-year-old girl had killed 2 innocent people due to her negligence. On the night of September 21, 2014, Jessica Carline was driving a vehicle eastbound on 2nd Street, approaching the Wyoming Medical Center, when the vehicle went over the curb and hit a sign in front of the hospital and the building itself. Due to that crash, Brandon Avery and Amanda Strickland, both 27, died after battling for a few days. On the other hand, Carline was being treated as she was heavily injured as well. According to some reports, the police found traces of chemicals in her blood consistent with those found in a canned air duster, which could have made her high. They also estimated that Carline might have been traveling over 76 miles per hour, and there were no signs that the brakes were used as she was wearing her seatbelt. Some reports also say that the police also found traces of marijuana in her car. As soon as Carline was treated, she was sent to trial. Pleaded guilty to 2 counts of vehicular homicide at the Wyoming Medical Center. The jury then announced her a whopping 40 years of sentence in prison. Many people believe that she was wrongfully sentenced, as she was just a kid who got into an accident, while others believed that she deserved it. Number 1. Jasmine Richardson. We've heard stories of people committing suicide in love, but this 12-year-old from Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, went to an unimaginable extent and killed her own family along with her boyfriend. This is the story of Jasmine Richardson. 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson was in love with her 23-year-old boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke, and was looking to marry him. But her family didn't approve of this relationship as she was underage and Jeremy was 11 years older than her. Even after trying to convince them multiple times, she couldn't win their approval. No! They even restrained her from meeting Jeremy as they believed Jeremy wasn't good for her. When things got out of hand for Jasmine and Jeremy, they decided to go on a dark path and planned to kill Jasmine's family. When Jasmine was locked in her house, the duo secretly started planning the murder, and in April 2006, they executed it. On the night of April 23rd, Jeremy entered Richardson's house and brutally stabbed Jasmine's mother, Deborah Richardson, 12 times. After Deborah was killed, Jeremy turned his attention to Jasmine's father, Mark Richardson, and stabbed him 24 times. Jasmine was standing by the wall seeing her parents being brutally murdered by her boyfriend. When the duo was planning, Jasmine refused to participate in the murders. But at last, she agreed to go through the inhumane act of her life and mercilessly murder her younger brother Jacob, who was 8 years old. The duo was eventually caught, and Jasmine was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, and Jeremy was sentenced to 25 years of imprisonment on accounts of 3 first-degree murder counts. That's all from today's episode of Crime 101. Let us know in the comments who you think was wrongfully sentenced. While you're on your way down, do give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.